Happy Tuesday. What's going on, guys? It's Ricky with TechBud Solutions, and our CPI data report has officially been released, and markets are confused about it, is to say the least. I'm going to break this all down. I actually went live for the CPI report, so if you guys didn't see that, feel free to go back and watch it if you want to see how the markets reacted and what exactly was shared in that CPI report. In this video, I'm just going to mainly cover what it is that's going on right now. I do want to let you guys know that I do have an active short right now on PLTR. I just hit $5,000 profit on the day, but this is an open position. So any open position is a position that's open to risk. I took this position during today's live trading session with my LPP team. Remember, my LPP team gets to watch me trade live every single day. If you want to watch me trade live starting tomorrow, again, second link in the description down below will give you access to just that. With that being said, let's pay attention to QQQ. QQQ, at one moment we're rising, another moment we're selling off, another moment we're rising. What's going on? Did inflation go up? Did inflation go down? I'm sure that you would be very confused based off of what you are seeing Trump saying. Saying trillions of dollars have been taken in tariffs, which has been incredible for our country, its stock market, its generational wealth, and everything else. It's been proven that even in this late stage, which is not true, tariffs have not caused inflation, which is also not true, because if you actually pay attention to the report that was released today, very simply, yes, overall CPI was not negatively affected as much as what was expected, right? The expectation was a 2.8% inflation rate. We came in at 2.7. The previous month was 2.7. We still saw the same jump as expected of 0.2%. We came in at 0.2%. But core CPI, which is the main focus for the Federal Reserve, we were at 2.9. We were expecting 3. We came in at 3.1, higher than what was expected. But the actual inflation jump, 0.3, came in at 0.3, as expected. To say this in a very simple way, this puts the Federal Reserve in a pretty tough spot because some people can word it in a very nasty way. Core inflation rose 0.3% in July and 3.1% year over year. This is the fastest annual pace in 5 months, which is true. That is actually true. So Trump's statement of tariffs have not caused inflation is factually incorrect. That's before Trump's tariffs took effect in August. It's only going to get worse from here. So again, I want to remind you, there was the 90-day pause. That's why it was issued, just like he just issued another 90-day pause to China. But nonetheless, that's why we haven't seen these huge impacts in our CPI report. Because remember, once we start collecting again, that's fine, but the CPI report is delayed, right? The inflation that we see is in the months that follow, and it takes time for that to be tracked. With that being said, then Trump goes out of his way and says, Jerome Powell must now lower the rates. It's insane to me that someone that is in such a powerful position gets so offended when anyone says anything negative about him, but he can openly trash everyone. And this is the part that I think really separates Republicans from MAGA idiots. And it's those that don't just blindly follow and agree with anything the president says like it's a sports team. He's a human and he makes mistakes just like any human would. It's really important to acknowledge that. But when he consistently just one moment, he's best friends and buddy with Jerome Powell. When he tries to call Jerome Powell out at the Fed building, do you guys remember that video? And he says, "Oh, you guys spent over three or $5 billion more than what was expected." And then Jerome Powell at that moment stands his ground and says, "No, that building was built 5 years ago," and makes him look like an absolute idiot because all he's trying to do is make a point. But again, it's hard to make a point when you don't understand what you're talking about. And I'm not here to say that Trump hasn't done good things for our country, right? But I'm just here to say that all he ever tries to do, especially on social media, is I just wish he wasn't as vocal as he was. Because he has moments like this where, again, he gets so triggered and so offended by what other people have said about him. But then he goes out of his way and then does the exact same to others. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, that is the definition of a hypocrite, right? That being said, where does this leave us with the market? Well, we would have to go to the Fed rate monitor tool. So we can pull this up right now. Fed rate monitor tool according to investing.com. Remember, this gives us a better understanding if the Federal Reserve is expected to raise or cut interest rates. And as of today, there is a 90% probability that the Federal Reserve is going to pause in the month of September. So that's a very high probability, one of the highest probabilities that I've seen in some time. But the reason that this could be is that, again, our overall inflation rate came in as expected, or at least a little bit lower than what is expected. And I think that's what the market is really harboring on. But core CPI came in higher than what's expected. So I want to wait and see what Fed officials begin to say about our inflation rate. If they comment more on core inflation or comment on overall inflation. Because if you actually pay attention to that inflation report very quickly, you could see that both overall inflation has been upticking since April and core inflation has been upticking since May. And we just saw one of the biggest jumps that we've seen in recent months. So again, working against and away from the 2% target that the Federal Reserve had. Remember, the Federal Reserve had no problem cutting rates, but they wanted to be closer to their 2% target. And then Trump began implementing tariffs, which is fine. Trump can do whatever it is that he wants. But now he can't be surprised if the Federal Reserve isn't so willing to cut rates, because tariffs have been known to be inflationary. So they just wanted to be cautious and make sure that data supported rate cuts. So it looks like September might be the first month where cuts might actually happen, and that could send markets even higher. But this can all change if, again, it is to be understood that the Fed is not a fan of the current inflation rate. So we'll make sure that we keep you guys up to date. Just wanted to make sure that you are aware. And the other thing that I think is important to pay attention to is that NVIDIA is only down 0.5% after the news that it's losing 40% of its revenue stream. For those that do not know, with the deal that's going on in China, so NVIDIA, the amount of revenue NVIDIA made selling GPUs to Chinese tech companies, if you combine H2Os and black market, of total non-US authorized sales, so this is the A100, the H100, and the H200, this would mean that it would lose possibly 40%. So again, this is for those that are really trying to focus on the current uncertainty of what's happening in China. A lot of you guys know is that Trump recently announced that NVIDIA and AMD choose to share 15% of its revenue with our government. It's just another way, in my opinion, that they're masking a tariff, right? But in return, China is now telling all of their tech companies to find an alternative instead of NVIDIA's chips. So we'll see how this directly impacts NVIDIA's revenue in the up and coming quarters, because that's the part that's most important. As of right now, NASDAQ incredibly overbought, testing previous highs. There's no question that we're overextended, but can they continue to push higher? Of course. Market sentiment is incredibly bullish. Market sentiment is incredibly irrational, and it will find for any excuse to continue to push up. But we were given signs today of strong retracements. So again, this is why I'm so willing to short companies like PLTR at these extremely overbought and overvalued levels, just like we've seen with HIMS, right? HIMS went from $70 per share all the way down to $47, losing 30% of its value. Do you guys remember when I was making videos about HIMS and calling it an overbought stock, and people were getting offended on why I wasn't hyping it up? It's because I don't want beginners losing 30% of their value in about a week and a half worth of trading. Again, where are they all now? Why aren't they talking about HIMS and it being the greatest investment in history? Because they can all see through the BS. When any company is extremely overbought and overvalued, it comes at a greater form of risk to invest at those elevated levels. It doesn't make your investment wrong because you got it at a really good deal, but it just doesn't make sense for beginners to jump in at those elevated levels. You should never encourage a beginner to buy at all-time highs when you know the market simply does not belong there. So again, very excited to follow up. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment down below. And don't forget, if you want to watch me trade live as soon as tomorrow, the second link in the description down below. And you can also rewatch today's live trading session where you can see where I took that short on PLTR that later led to a $4,000 gain. I appreciate your time, and like always, let's make sure that we end the year on a green note. Take care, team.